So we are going to be looking at a scenario where the Soviet Union reforms modern day. Now, the Soviet Union was a country during the Cold War or during World War II, and they were pretty much the Russia of that timeline. Of course, before this, you had the Russian Empire, and once this country collapsed, we had the Russia and, well, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, the Baltics. So, we're going to be looking at a scenario where it reforms modern day. This is, well, at least right now, in current time, I would say this is impossible to happen unless Russia were to take over all of Ukraine and, well, this whole area over here in Central Asia figures itself out. Anyways, if you guys enjoy this content, make sure to like and subscribe, and let's go ahead and get into this scenario. So the Soviets are back, and, well, there might be a country that's kind of mad about that. This is a communist country, so automatically we see the Soviets setting up some rigged elections inside of some of the countries that they border. I do want to remind you, NATO is going to be enabled in this scenario. Other mapping YouTubers sometimes just don't I don't even know how to explain it. They don't include NATO in some of their scenarios, but in this scenario there will be a NATO. So just know that. And the first country we see the USSR rigging an election to, and that is actually going to be Romania. Romania elects a communist leader, making them they're going to align themselves with the Soviet Union. And, well, that is not the only country that they rigged the election, because they're also going to be rigging the election of Hungary, Bulgaria, as well as Serbia. And the final country they will be rigging the election for, well, at least for now, is going to be Montenegro. So the Warsaw Pact seems to be trying to reform itself, but Poland, well, the USSR did try to rig the election of Poland, but the Polish democratic stuff still beat out the election. But now, with all of these countries leaving NATO, it's going to make mainly the US look more at the Soviet Union, even more than they already did. And, well, bad news for the US, because Cuba has now just realigned themselves with the Soviet Union. So that's awesome, of course. But now we need to include NATO on this map. Every single country in blue you see is a part of NATO, with NATO being more active on making sure the USSR does not expand into any more of these NATO countries. We see them actually going to war, and that will mainly be Serbia going to war with Kosovo. We see mainly Serbian troops, but also a little bit from the Soviet Union, enter into Kosovo and surrounding pretty much their whole border. North Macedonia and Albania and Italy and Greece are going to, well, not Greece, but these guys are going to supply Kosovo a little bit, but they don't want to do it much because World War III could very well start. We have a lot of Kosovo people fleeing into North Macedonia and Albania before the whole country gets captured. And in the peace treaty, Serbia fully annexes Kosovo, and Serbia is happy. But that is not all, as we now see the Warsaw and the Soviets declaring war on Bosnia. Serbia is going to send their troops into these Serbian areas that are inside of Bosnia and Herzegovina. We then see Montenegro actually carrying their weight and invading into Bosnia, and this whole border over here is going to get invaded by Serbian and, well, the Warsaw. With this happening, we see Herzegovina. I do not know if this is the actual Herzegovina area, so I'm sorry if it is not. But we see Herzegovina declaring their independence away from Bosnia, and Bosnia and Herzegovina is falling apart. NATO then sends their troops into Bosnia, and, well, it's kind of chaotic now. We see the Warsaw Pact getting this land, and, well, NATO getting this land. And now let's look at a peace treaty between Herzegovina, NATO, and the Warsaw Pact. Here's what the peace treaty looks like, with Serbia getting these Serbian lands that Serbian ethnic people were relying inside of Bosnia. Montenegro also expands into some of these areas that they occupied. We see Croatia getting some land out of this invasion. They kind of demanded it by NATO. We see Bosnia up in the north. and Herzegovina down in the south, but Herzegovina is actually going to have to make a decision to join up with NATO or the Warsaw Pact. If it's not obvious, Herzegovina is going to join up with the Warsaw Pact. They want to expand their borders and, well, yeah. With that whole European thing going on, we need to take our eyes off of Europe. Over in Mexico, we see pro-communist forces declaring their independence and more wanting to reform the government of Mexico. With the Soviet Union having Cuba right here, they're able to supply these rebellions and push through these areas very quickly, moving through Central America and encircling a lot of Mexican troops in this encirclement, which all of those troops get captured and sent over to Cuba. NATO is going to start supplying Mexico as we see them push through into this Baja Californian area, pushing down the Baja California until Soviet troops stop them. And well, this whole rebellious area over here is going to get taken over by NATO and Mexico, while we see the Mexicans enclose in on this little area right here, but they don't fully get rid of it. The Soviets have been supplying this area very well through China, which could say a lot of stuff about China. But the Soviets put really a lot of work into both this area and the southern part over here. And, well, these areas are soon going to meet up, and this is not good for Mexico as they begin a sweeping front up the southern part of Mexico. And I'm pretty sure they also just captured Mexico City, so this is very bad. It's also very bad as Cuba now directly declared war on Mexico. And, well, all of these front lines are expanding, even the Baja California one over with the U.S. And, well, the U.S. and NATO are going to make a decision. They send their troops into Mexico for the U.S. And, well, they do this, one, to set up a buffer state between the Soviets and, well, the U.S. because they know they're not going to win this war. And two, to just save any regions that they could save from the Soviets as they want to prevent the spread of communism throughout America, which it has now landed in America twice, being Cuba, and now going to be in Mexico. The rest of these areas are going to fall over to NATO, but then these areas fall over to the Soviets, and, well, let's look at a peace treaty. Here's what we have the peace treaty looking like. We have the NATO part that they invaded into being turned into northern Mexico, and this area joins up with NATO. They are NATO aligned. We have Baja California. Now, the only reason Baja California was made and not split up into these two, which I will talk about, this is kind of the buffer state area, so these two, which are the main bases of this new communist Mexico area, they just decided to split them into two, so that way if one got taken over, the other one wouldn't get fully taken over at the same time. This is like the buffer state, so that way they made this area pretty wide, so that way these two could send their forces up as far as they can before the American troops get down there. This area right here is a puppet state of Cuba, and, well, it's also a buffer state. But Cuba is probably going to get taken out pretty quickly if a world war to break out, so hopefully that doesn't happen. But there was another war, and we have another one taking place yet again. This rebellion takes place over here inside of Saudi Arabia, and this is bad because it's pretty close to Riyadh. This area is completely cooked because the U.S. didn't send any troops down to Saudi Arabia. So what we have is kind of a sweeping down through Saudi Arabia. Of course, these forces, the rebellious forces, are being supplied by the Soviet Union directly. Pretty soon, Riyadh does get taken by the Soviets, and we see Saudi Arabia surrender. In the peace treaty, we just see Saudi Arabia completely fall over to the Russian alliance, which we now see a couple more member states joining. Iran is going to join. We also see Iraq join in on this. But with this happening, we see NATO transforming their alliance in not just into a North Atlantic. We see them transform into their alliance into a world organization treaty. And with this happening, we see Syria, because they have a new government, and this new government would have been set up. We're going to say that it's U.S. aligned. And while Syria joins the side of NATO, we see Oman, UAE, and Qatar join in on NATO. We also get the green light for Morocco to join in on this. And to pay our respects to Adisbro, we need to sink Western Sahara into the ocean to honor him. But we do also see Libya and Sudan join in on the Warsaw Pact, which then leads to Egypt joining in on NATO, as well as Jordan and Israel. Israel takes a long time. They applied, but not a lot of people really said yes to it. But then the U.S. kind of just went ahead and made them a part. And we pretty much now see the whole Middle East get filled in with outside powers just like that. The Soviet Union then gets North Korea on their side. And after that happening, we see Japan and South Korea joining, as well as Taiwan. And with Taiwan joining, we pretty much see China join in on the Warsaw Pact, which is probably a different name at this point. We then see, it's pretty much just, We then see the Philippines join in on NATO, as well as Australia and New Zealand. And, well, if the Soviet Union did reform, it would be pretty bad. As you can see with this scenario, at least this is what I think would happen. Not with the Mexico stuff. This is just for entertainment purposes only. But what we could also see is Mongolia being split between China and the Soviet Union. But I'm just going to show the Soviet Union taking it all because, yeah. But that is going to be all for this scenario. I did not want to do a full-out war because I already have 2 videos going up today. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed this new content, make sure to like and subscribe and let me know in the comments because I want to keep doing more of this. Anyways, I will see you guys in the next episode. Goodbye.